July 16, 1944, Normandy Sergeant Joseph Novak of the 899th Tank Destroyer Battalion peered through the periscope of his M10 Wolverine. At a distance of 800 meters stood a German Tiger IV for him. This range was both dangerously close and yet too far for a confident shot. Novak knew the math of this duel. The Tiger's frontal armor was 100 millimeters of steel. His 76 millimeter gun could, at best, penetrate 90. The M10 weighed 29.6 tons. The Tiger nearly double that, 57 tons. The American crew had only two real advantages: faster reaction time and higher mobility. 48 kilometers per hour versus 38 for the German. Statistics were no comfort. Each Tiger destroyed on average 5 to 6 Allied machines before being lost itself. The gunner whispered, "Sergeant, he's turning the turret." "Fire at the tracks," Novak ordered. The first shot, a miss. The second struck a road wheel. The Tiger halted, but its 88 millimeter gun was still searching for a target. The third round hit the side of the turret at a 30-degree angle. Penetration. The German crew began evacuating. In staff documents, this episode was recorded as a typical example of tactical advantage over technical superiority. But in truth, it was part of a much larger story. The story of how Americans managed to turn relatively weak machines into effective weapons against the most fearsome tanks of the Third Reich. When in 1942, the United States entered the Second World War, Tank Command faced a serious problem. In North Africa, Panzer III and Panzer IV already dominated, and intelligence reported even heavier models on the way. The American M4 Sherman, with its 75 millimeter gun and 51 millimeter frontal armor, matched the needs of 1941, but clearly not the threats ahead. On June 3, 1942, the U.S. Ordnance Department issued technical requirements for a fast tank destroyer with reinforced armament. The concept was clear: the most powerful possible gun on a lighter, more mobile platform, even at the cost of weaker armor. In combat, speed and firepower were to replace protection. By September 1942, Fisher Tank Division presented the first prototype on the chassis of the M4A2 Sherman. Officially named Gun Motor Carriage M10, crews unofficially called it Wolverine for its aggressive tactics and sudden sharp attacks. The British, who received 1,648 machines through Lend-Lease, simply called it TD, Tank Destroyer. Its specifications were compromises. The 76.2 millimeter M7 gun with a 50 caliber barrel length could penetrate 88 millimeters of armor at 1 kilometer at a 30-degree angle. The open-top turret provided full 360-degree vision, but left the crew vulnerable to artillery fragments and air attack. Maximum armor thickness was only 37 millimeters front and 19 on the sides. By comparison, the Tiger I had 100 millimeters at the front. Its baptism of fire came in Tunisia in March 1943. The 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion faced Panzer IVs and Italian M1340s. At medium ranges of 1,200 to 1,500 meters, the Wolverine destroyed enemy machines with reasonable confidence. But in the sandy dunes, its heavy weight, the same 29.6 tons, limited mobility. The real trial awaited in Normandy. There, in July 1944, the M10 first met the Tiger Solms and the Panther, and there began for the Germans the unexpected story of how a technically modest vehicle became a nightmare for their armored forces. Morning of June 11, 1944, the 5th day after the Allied landing. Captain William Greenbow, commander of Company C of the 899th Tank Destroyer Battalion, received a short radio message. Tiger sighted near Villers-Bocage, moving east. Coordinates pointed to a crossroads 2.3 kilometers from his position. Greenbow instantly recalled the characteristics of the machine he was about to face. The Tiger pierced his 57 tons, KWK-36 gun of 88 millimeters. Muzzle velocity 773 meters per second, armor penetration over 110 millimeters at 1 kilometer. For his M10 Wolverine, the only chance was to hit the side, 80 millimeters of armor at right angle, and only at ranges under 800 meters. A frontal duel meant certain death. He deployed 3 machines in ambush by thick hedgerows. The Norman bocage, tall hedges on earthen banks, limited visibility to 200 to 300 meters, and severely restricted maneuver. For heavy German tanks, this was a trap. While the relative speed of the M10, 48 kilometers per hour, could prove decisive, at 1447, the Tiger appeared on the road. Behind its massive silhouette was Obersturmführer SS Michael Wittmann, an ace with 138 kills on the Eastern Front. The tank moved at about 25 kilometers per hour, turret facing 2 o'clock. The gunner of the 3rd M10 heard the order, "Wait until 400 meters." The Tiger advanced. 600 meters, 500, 450. At 380 meters, Greenbow commanded, "Fire!" The first M62 APCBC round struck the track. The Tiger halted, turret whipping around. Second shot, into the lower side, where armor thinned to 60 millimeters. Penetration. But the 3rd M10 did not escape. A PZGR-39 shell from the Tiger's gun pierced its frontal armor at 420 meters. Of its 5 crewmen, only 2 survived. The Tiger, already burning, continued firing for 4 more minutes until ammo detonation blew the turret off. After the fight, the Americans inspected the wreck. Of 8 shots, only 3 had penetrated. The rest left dents 15 to 20 millimeters deep, not enough to kill. This experience shaped a new tactic. Shoot not at the strongest areas, but seek weak points at unexpected angles. In his report, Greenbow wrote, "M10 cannot face the Tiger in direct combat, but it can destroy it if it dictates the terms of the encounter." That sentence became an unwritten doctrine for all tank destroyer battalions in Normandy. On June 15, 1944, Major General Leland Hobbs, commander of U.S. tank destroyers in Europe, signed Directive TD 4406. In 23 pages of instructions, the essence came down to one paragraph. M10s operate in groups of at least 3 vehicles. The first acts as bait, the second attacks from the flank, the third secures the withdrawal. The tactic drew on Tunisian experience but was adapted to Normandy. Hedgerows up to 4 meters tall and banks 1 to 2 meters thick created narrow corridors. Once inside, a Tiger or Panther lost the ability to rotate its turret more than 60 to 70 degrees. Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Bruce calculated the optimal ranges: 600 to 800 meters for first contact, 300 to 500 meters for the finishing shot. At these distances, the M7 gun still carried enough energy to pierce Tiger's 80mm sides and Panther's 50, while German crews, due to thick foliage, saw only limited arcs. On June 18th, near St. Lo, the 701st Heavy Tank Battalion of the Wehrmacht encountered this doctrine. 4 Tigers, under Hauptmann Klaus von Kram, advanced in column, 50-meter spacing. Phase 1. M10, number 7 of the 705th Battalion, suddenly opened fire from 720 meters, missed, then quickly retreated at 45 kilometers per hour. The column halted. The lead Tiger's commander ordered 2 tanks to pursue the fugitive, Phase 2. 400 meters further, 2 more M10s attacked from the opposite roadside. Range, 380 meters, 4 rounds in 24 seconds. 1 Tiger lost its tracks, another took a hit to the engine compartment. Phase 3. The same M10 that had retreated repositioned and returned from another direction. The 2 Tigers chasing it ran into crossfire. At 290 meters, an American round struck beneath the turret and detonated ammo. The explosion blew the turret 8 meters away. The battle lasted 11 minutes. All 4 Tigers destroyed or disabled. The Americans lost 1 M10. An 88mm shell penetrated the open turret, killing 3 crew instantly. But the 4-to-1 exchange in favor of the weaker machine shocked both Germans and Allies. Von Kram, who survived, later admitted under interrogation, "We expected a tank battle. Instead, we stumbled into a hunt, where we became the prey." This line was quoted in Armored Cavalry Journal in September 1944 as a symbol of the new reality of tank warfare. July statistics confirmed the results. American tank destroyer battalions in Normandy destroyed 89 heavy German machines, Tigers and Panthers, at the cost of 34 M10s. A ratio of 2.6 to 1 shattered the myth of German technical invincibility and proved strategic initiative was passing to the Allies. September 1944, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Test Range, Maryland. Captured Tiger. Air number 2-51114, taken in Normandy, stood on the firing range. A team of 12 engineers from the Ordnance Department methodically fired at it from different ranges, at different angles, and with different types of rounds. The goal was pragmatic and simple: to create a detailed vulnerability map useful to M10 crews. Major Thomas Jenkins, head of the project, had 200 rounds of 76.2 millimeter ammunition, 3 types of ordnance, and a serviceable trophy Tiger. The test results fundamentally changed the American command's understanding of where to shoot and when. Test 1, 1,000 meters, frontal armor, 100 millimeters at roughly 80 degrees. Of 15 shots with M62 APCBC rounds, none penetrated. Maximum dent depth, 22 millimeters. Conclusion: a frontal attack at ranges beyond 800 meters is ineffective and, in practice, suicidal. Test 2, 800 meters, side, 80 millimeters at a right angle. Of 20 shots, 6 penetrated the armor through and 8 caused cracks. 6 ricocheted. Penetration success, about 30%. That level of effectiveness proved sufficient to damage the engine or ammunition stowage given a nearly right-angle hit. Test 3, 500 meters, rear projection, 80 millimeters. Of 18 shots, 14 penetrated. A success rate of 77%. The engine compartment proved most vulnerable. Hits to the radiator or fuel tank started fires in 65% of cases. The most interesting discovery came from Lieutenant Robert Shaw, a ballistic specialist. He noticed a construction detail. Between the hull side and the turret ring, there existed a gap of 12 to 18 millimeters, covered only by a thin 25 millimeter deflector plate. A shot into that seam, at an angle of 25 to 35 degrees, could punch through the deflector, allow the projectile into the turret interior, and initiate ammunition detonation. Test 4, 400 meters, the turret hull junction zone. Of 25 impacts, 9 struck exactly in that seam and pierced the protection. Success rate 36%. Although the target area was narrow, roughly 18 millimeters wide, a hit there guaranteed critical damage to the tank. Based on the tests, Jenkins produced a color-coded vulnerability chart. Red, non-penetrable zones, frontal plate, upper turret. Yellow, conditionally penetrable, sides at certain angles. Green, guaranteed vulnerable, rear, seams, tracks. The diagram was printed in a run of 8,500 copies and distributed to tank destroyer battalions in Europe. By November 1944, every M10 commander carried a laminated card 15 by 20 centimeters. On one side, diagrams of Tiger and Panther with vulnerability zones. On the other, recommended engagement ranges and attack angles. The card became so popular that Sherman crews and even British Cromwell crews began copying it. The effect showed up in the numbers. In August 1944, M10s expended on average 8.4 rounds per one destroyed Tiger. By December, that figure fell to 4.7 rounds, not because the gun suddenly became stronger, but because crews learned to shoot precisely where the tank was most vulnerable. One episode illustrates this best. December the 24th, 1944, in the Ardennes, Sergeant James O'Connor of the 814th Battalion encountered a Tiger at a distance of 420 meters. Instead of panicking, he waited until the tank turned its side slightly, aimed at the zone under the turret, and fired 2 shots 6 seconds apart. Both rounds entered the gap between turret and hull. The Tiger detonated 14 seconds after the first hit. In his report, O'Connor wrote, "The Aberdeen chart works. Tiger is not invincible if you know its anatomy." That phrase became a de facto motto of American tank destroyers through the end of the war. September 18, 1944, the small French town of Ericourt, roughly 40 kilometers east of Nancy. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, 36 M10 vehicles, took defensive positions on the hills around the town. Recon reported the approaching 113th Panzer Brigade, 88 tanks, including 30 Panther AOSF, Gs, and 14 Tiger Is. Captain Edward Barker had 8 hours until contact. He drove the perimeter and marked 12 key ambush points. Terrain heights of 120 to 180 meters above sea level gave observation of 1,200 to 1,500 meters, but Bocage limited German maneuver, leaving only 3 main roads for advance. The plan was simple and brutal. Echeloned defense. First line, 6 M10s at 900 to 1,100 meters to stop the vanguard and force the Germans to deploy. Second line, 18 vehicles on the flanks, range 500 to 700 meters, the main striking force. Third line, 12 M10s in reserve for mobile counterattacks. At 6:20 in the morning on September 19th, the German column appeared on the northern road. 6 Panthers led the column, followed by Tigers and Panzer IVs. The column moved cautiously, about 15 kilometers per hour. The first shot rang out at 6:34. An M10 from position Alpha 3 at 980 meters struck the front plate of a Panther, 50 millimeters at approximately 55 degrees. The hit was rare and unexpected. The probability of such penetration was below 15%. The Panther burned and blocked the road. The column halted. The next 15 minutes became a methodical barrage. Morning fog and smoke screens made it difficult for the Germans to locate the firing sources. Americans followed a pattern: salvo of 2 to 3 rounds, rapid repositioning, classic shoot and scoot. At 7:10, the Germans attempted a frontal advance across a field east of the road, 22 tanks moving at 20 to 25 kilometers per hour. Barker waited until range closed to 550 meters and ordered, "Second line, fire for effect." From the flanks, 18 M10s opened up. The theoretical rate of fire, 10 rounds per minute from these positions, meant up to 180 projectiles in the air in the first minute. Not all penetrated, but the volume of fire created chaos in the German ranks. Result of the first minute: 3 Panthers destroyed immediately. Side hits at ranges of 400 to 550 meters. 1 Tiger immobilized by a damaged track. 2 Panzer IVs burned after engine compartment hits. The German assault collapsed within 8 minutes. The second German attack at 9:45 was more cautious. Tigers were held in the second line as mobile artillery, while Panthers advanced in small groups, using terrain folds for cover. This time, the Americans lost 4 M10s during a 20-minute phase of combat, but Barker's reserve changed the outcome. 12 M10s from the third line, previously inactive, maneuvered around the German positions from the south and struck the column's rear and flanks. Distances were 300 to 450 meters, almost point blank for tank warfare. In 12 minutes, 5 Panthers and 2 Tigers were destroyed. At 2:30 in the afternoon, German command ordered a withdrawal. Of the 88 tanks that began the fight, 41 remained on the field, 18 destroyed, and 23 damaged. Americans lost 16 M10s, but successfully repelled the numerically superior enemy. General George Patton, commanding the Third Army, visited Aricourt on September 21st. After surveying the battlefield, he addressed Barker, "Captain, your men just proved that German armor is not as invincible as credited." The quote entered the official history of the 704th Battalion. Battle statistics illustrated changes in armored warfare, a loss ratio of approximately 2.56 to 1 in favor of the technically weaker vehicle. Average kill ranges were about 420 meters for Tigers and 550 meters for Panthers. The main conclusion: absolute technical superiority does not decide the fight. Correct position, coordination, and disciplined fire do. December 16th, 1944, 5:30 in the morning. Operation Wacht am Rhein, the last major German offensive in the West. At the start, 250,000 soldiers, about 1,400 tanks and self-propelled guns, including 45 Tiger Is, 35 Tiger IIs, Königstiger, and over 200 Panthers. The goal: break American lines in the Ardennes, reach Antwerp, split Allied forces. On the axis of advance lay the stretch line of the 106th U.S. Infantry Division, reinforced by the 634th and 705th Tank Destroyer Battalions. Together, 54 M10s against hundreds of German vehicles in fog, snow, and visibility of 100 to 200 meters. At 8:15 in the town of Schönberg, Sergeant Ralph Mister, 634th Battalion, spotted a silhouette in the mist at about 150 meters. At first, it looked like a Sherman, similar silhouette. For a moment, the fog cleared. The characteristic contours of a Tiger II, mass 69.8 tons, turret front 180 millimeters, hull 150 millimeters at 50 degrees. The 76 millimeter on the M10 could not take the frontal plate of the Royal Tiger, even at point blank. Mister knew this from briefings. He ordered the driver a sharp left to shelter behind a stone house. The Tiger II opened fire. An 88 millimeter Fibdur 43 tore through the wall, but the M10 was already out of the line of sight. What followed was 40 minutes of cat and mouse. Mister threaded narrow streets trying to reach the flank or rear of the heavy German. In town, the bulky Tiger II reacted slower to abrupt direction changes. Large size and mass made turns awkward. Even if the manual listed a turning radius, in real urban fabric, advantage went to whoever changed position faster and vanished from view. At 9:02, the M10 presented a 65-degree angle to the Tiger II's side. Distance, 85 meters, and extreme risk. The Royal Tiger's flank was 80 millimeters at a right angle. Theoretically vulnerable. First shot, a ricochet from the mid-plate. Second, 5 seconds later, lower into the road wheel area. Penetration. The Maybach HL 230 engine stalled, the Tiger II froze. The crew abandoned the vehicle in 2 minutes. Mister did not pursue. His load contained only 8 of 54 rounds. But this episode was exceptional. By day's end, Germans pierced the defense along an approximately 80-kilometer sector. The 634th lost 19 of 36 M10s, mostly to Tiger IIs and Panthers at 200 to 400 meters in fog, where American advantages in mobility and observation evaporated. A critical episode, near Saint-Vith on December 22nd. Kampfgruppe Piper, Obersturmbannführer, SS Joachim Piper. 72 tanks, among them 12 Tiger IIs, intercepted the 7th U.S. Armored Division's communications. Opposing them were 14 M10s of the 705th Battalion under Captain John Rogers. Rogers understood frontal defense was suicidal. He divided forces into 4 groups of 3 to 4 vehicles and placed them at crossroads with intervals of 800 to 1,200 meters. The task, not to annihilate Piper, but to delay and wear him down. At 2:20 in the afternoon, the first ambush, 3 M10s versus 6 Panthers. Fire at 620 meters. Detonation of 1 vehicle's ammunition, a second knocked out. Americans fell back to the next position. Germans spent 35 minutes clearing. A second ambush at 1.1 kilometers repeated the scenario. In 8 hours, Kampfgruppe Piper advanced only 6.5 kilometers instead of a planned 25. It lost 8 tanks, 4 Panthers, 2 Tiger IIs, 2 Panzer IFs. Americans lost 11 M10s, but the objective was met. The tempo of the offensive was broken and reinforcements arrived. The overall picture for M10s in the Ardennes was worse than in Normandy or Aricourt. From December 16th to January 25th, tank destroyer battalions lost 214 vehicles, the highest losses of the campaign. The kill-to-loss ratio fell to around 1.3 to 1. Reasons were known: weather that nullified observation and mobility, the mass appearance of Tiger IIs with effectively unpenetrable frontal armor, the surprise of the operation. Even in the worst conditions, M10s did the main thing: delay, disorganize, buy time for reserves. After the war, Lieutenant General Otto Skorzeny acknowledged in his memoirs, "American tank destroyers became an unexpected factor. We expected to break through in 2 to 3 days, but every crossroads turned into a separate battle. It cost us time we did not have." January 1945, Fisher Tank Division Plant, Michigan. Engineers pored over reports of M10 actions in the Ardennes. The main conclusion: insufficient penetration capability against Tiger IIs and late-model Panthers with reinforced armor. Solutions were sought in British experience. From November 1944, the British rearmed some of their M10s, called Achilles, with the QF 17-pounder gun, caliber 76.2 millimeters. barrel length 55 calibers versus 50 on the American M7. Muzzle velocity, about 950 meters per second versus 792 meters per second for the US baseline. Ballistics were striking. At 1,000 meters, an APDS round could penetrate roughly 209 millimeters at a right angle. Theoretically, a chance to punch even the Tiger II's frontal 150 millimeters at a favorable angle. The United States ordered 1,000 sets of 17-pounders in March 1945, but by war's end, received only 124. In British service, the vehicles were known as M10 Achilles IC. American crews unofficially nicknamed them Super Wolverine. First recorded use, March 8, 1945, Rhineland. The 771st Battalion, with 12 M10s armed with 17-pounders, entered battle with a Tiger II near Wesel. Contact distance, 1,150 meters, unusually long for a classic M10 engagement. Lieutenant Howard Clark ordered fire. The first APDS streaked for 1.21 seconds and struck the upper front plate, penetration, and a fire from ammunition detonation. Drawbacks were obvious. The new gun was heavier by about 340 kilograms. Turret balance was upset. Recoil increased by roughly 180 millimeters. Risks of injury in the cramped turret rose. Ammunition capacity dropped from 54 to 48 rounds because of the larger size of the shells. An alternative line of improvement, new projectile types. From February 1945, HVAP, high-velocity armor piercing, rounds with tungsten cores began arriving. Muzzle velocity about 1,036 meters per second, penetration at 1,000 meters, roughly 157 millimeters at a right angle. For the standard M7, this was a sharp step forward. At about 800 meters, a chance emerged to penetrate a Tiger II's side at 30 to 40 degrees. The problem? Tungsten shortages. Each M10 received only 4 to 6 HVAP rounds per month. Crews adopted a simple rule, M62, for medium tanks and SPGs. HVAP reserved only for Tiger and Panther at critical ranges. Sergeant William Beckett, 803rd Battalion, wrote on March 15th, HVAP is the ace up your sleeve. You don't squander it, you save it for real danger. Another line was field-added armor. After the Ardennes crews welded extra plates to hull fronts, plus 12 to 20 millimeters, adding roughly 800 to 1,200 kilograms of weight. The psychological effect was strong. Officially, it was discouraged. Center of mass and speed suffered. In practice, command often turned a blind eye. General Bruce Clark, inspecting the 899th in March, saw M10s with add-on plates and sandbags on the glacis. Rather than reprimand, he said, "If it steadies the men and they fight better, leave it." By war's end, at least 7 notable M10 variants were in service. The base with M7, Achilles with the 17-pounder, versions with reinforced glacis, HVAP-equipped guns, and experiments like fake side skirts, Schürzen, to counter Panzerfausts. In numbers, it looked like this. M10 with the 17-pounder could engage heavy targets at about 35% greater distance than the baseline variant. HVAP increased effective penetration by about 40%. But scarcity made those rounds a precious resource. Field armor reduced losses from 88mm fire by about 15 to 20%, but reduced mobility, the M10's chief virtue. Every upgrade was a compromise. The same logic remained. Americans did not try to redraw the map of German heavy tanks. They adapted their equipment to real battlefield conditions and squeezed the maximum from what they had. December 16, 1944, 5:30 in the morning. Operation Wacht am Rhein, the last major German offensive in the West. The strike grouping, about 250,000 soldiers and about 1,400 tanks and self-propelled guns, among them 45 Tiger IV, 35 Tiger II Königsteiger, and over 200 Panthers. Objective: break through the American defenses in the Ardennes, reach Antwerp, and split the Allies. On the likely axis of breakthrough lay the stretched line of the 106th U.S. Infantry Division, reinforced by the 634th and 705th Tank Destroyer Battalions, in total 54 M10s against hundreds of German vehicles in fog, snow, and visibility of 100 to 200 meters. 8:15, Schoenberg. Sergeant Ralph Mister, 634th Battalion, sees a silhouette in the fog at about 150 meters. At first, it looks like a Sherman. When the veil parts, the characteristic profile of a Tiger II emerges. Mass 69.8 tons, turret front 180 millimeters, hull front 150 millimeters at about 50 degrees. The 76mm gun on the M10 cannot defeat the Royal Tiger's frontal armor, even at point-blank range. This is well known from briefings. He orders the driver to make a sharp maneuver and take cover behind a stone building. The Tiger II opens fire. An 88mm Pezzi Juar 43 punches through the wall, but the M10 is already outside the line of sight. What follows is 40 minutes of cat and mouse. Mister weaves through narrow streets trying to get onto the heavy Germans' flank or rear. In urban terrain, the bulky Tiger II reacts more slowly. The real advantage belongs to the one who shifts positions faster and slips out of view. 9:02. The M10 comes out at about 65 degrees to the Tiger II's side. Range, about 85 meters. An extreme risk. The Royal Tiger's side, 80 millimeters at a right angle, theoretically vulnerable. First shot, a ricochet off the midside. Second, 5 seconds later, lower into the road wheel zone. Penetration. The Maybach HL-230 engine stalls. The tank freezes. The crew evacuates in about 2 minutes. Mister does not pursue. His ammunition load has 8 of 54 rounds remaining. This is more an exception than the rule. By day's end, the Germans tear open the defense along about 80 kilometers of front. The 634th loses 19 of 36 M10s, mostly to Tiger IIs and Panthers at 200 to 400 meters in fog, where American advantages in observation and maneuver evaporate. The most critical sector, near Saint-Vith. December 22nd, Kampfgruppe Piper, SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Piper, 72 tanks, of which 12 are Tiger II, cuts the communications of the 7th U.S. Armored Division. In their path, 14 M10s of the 705th Battalion under Captain John Rogers. Rogers understands frontal defense is suicide. He divides his force into 4 groups of 3 to 4 vehicles and places them at key crossroads at 800 to 1,200 meter intervals. The task, slow the tempo and wear the enemy down with a series of small engagements. 4:20 in the afternoon. First ambush. 3 M10s against 6 Panthers. Fire from about 620 meters. One enemy vehicle's ammo detonates, another is knocked out. The Americans fall back to the next position. The Germans spend about 35 minutes clearing. A second ambush about 1.1 kilometers farther, same script. Over 8 hours, Kampfgruppe Piper covers only about 6.5 kilometers instead of the planned about 25. Losses, 8 tanks, 4 Panthers, 2 Tiger II, 2 Panzer IV. The Americans, 11 M10s. But the mission is accomplished. The enemy's tempo is broken and reserves have time to arrive. Overall, for M10s in the Ardennes, the statistics are worse than in Normandy or at Ericourt. From December 16th to January 25th, tank destroyer battalions lose 214 vehicles, the highest losses of the war. The kill-to-loss ratio falls to about 1.3 to 1. The reasons are obvious: weather, observation, and maneuver, the mass appearance of Tiger II with an effectively unpenetrable frontal arc, and the surprise of the operation. Even in such conditions, M10s do the essential things: delay, disorganize, and buy time for reserves. After the war, Lieutenant General Otto Skorzeny acknowledges, "American tank destroyers became an unexpected factor. We expected to break through in 2 to 3 days, but every crossroads turned into a separate battle. It cost us time we did not have." January 1945, Fisher Tank Division Plant, Michigan. Engineers dissect frontline reports about M10s in the Ardennes. The main conclusion: insufficient penetration against Tiger II and late Panthers. The solution: British experience. Since November 1944, the British have been rearming their M10s, designated Achilles, with the QF 17-pounder, the same 76.2mm caliber, but a 55 caliber barrel versus 50 on the American M7. Muzzle velocity about 950 meters per second versus about 792. Ballistics impress. At 1,000 meters, the APDS penetrates about 209 millimeters at a right angle. Theoretically, a chance on the Tiger II's 150 millimeter frontal plate at a very small angle of encounter. The United States orders 1,000 17-pounder kits in March 1945, but by war's end receives only 124. In British service, they are M10 Achilles Ike. American crews unofficially call them Super Wolverine. First combat use, March 8, 1945, Rhineland. The 771st Battalion, with 12 M10s, 17-pounder, engages a Tiger II near Wuzzle. Range about 1,150 meters, unusually long for a classic M10. Lieutenant Howard Clark orders fire. The first APDS flies about 1.21 seconds. Enters the upper front plate, penetration, ignition from ammo detonation. Drawbacks exist as well. The gun's added mass, about plus 340 kilograms, upsets turret balance. Recoil grows by about 180 millimeters, a hazard in the cramped turret. Ammunition load drops from 54 to 48 because of larger rounds. An alternative, new ammunition. From February 1945, HVAP tungsten core arrives. Muzzle velocity about 1,036 meters per second. Penetration at 1,000 meters about 157 millimeters at 90 degrees. For the standard M7, this is a leap. At about 800 meters, there is a chance to pierce a Tiger II's side at 30 to 40 degrees. The problem, tungsten scarcity. 4 to 6 HVAP rounds per vehicle per month. Crew rule of thumb, M62 against medium tanks and Speegees. HVAP only against Tiger, Panther at critical ranges. Sergeant William Beckett, 803rd, notes on March 15th. HVAP is the ace up your sleeve. You do not waste it. Another direction, field-applied armor. After the Ardennes, crews weld plates to the glacis, plus 12 to 20 millimeters and plus 0.8 to 1.2 tons. The psychological effect is strong. Officially, discouraged. Center of mass and speed suffer. In practice, command often looks the other way. General Bruce Clark, inspecting the 899th in March, sees welded plates and sandbags and says, "If it steadies the men and they fight better, leave it." By war's end, there are at least 7 notable M10 variants. The baseline with M7, Achilles with the 17-pounder, versions with reinforced glacis, HVAP-equipped guns, and experiments like Scherzen, false side skirts, against Panzerfaust. In numbers, M10 plus 17-pounder engages heavy targets at about 35% greater range than the baseline. HVAP raises effective penetration by about 40%, but the ammunition allotment is tiny. Field armor reduces losses from 88mm fire by about 15 to 20% at the cost of mobility, the M10's chief virtue. The conclusion remains unchanged. Americans do not copy the German heavyweights. They adapt their own machine to battlefield realities and squeeze the maximum from what they have. February 1945, a psychiatric assessment of 18 M10 crews from different battalions. The study is led by Major David Rosenman, a military psychiatrist of the 12th Army Group. Goal: to understand how crews live with the knowledge of technical inferiority against heavy German tanks. The conclusion is unexpected. To the question, "Are you afraid of meeting a Tiger?" 16 of 18 commanders answer, "Yes," but add, "no more than of any other deadly situation." Fear is rational, controlled, not paralyzing. Sergeant Thomas Delaney, with 7 destroyed Tigers to his credit, explains, "Sherman, 30 tons, 75mm gun. Crews often do not know Tiger's exact weak spots, go head-to-head, and die. We, 29.6 tons, 76mm, but we know where to shoot and how to maneuver. That is the difference between death and survival. The key is training. The M10 course, 14 weeks versus 12 for Sherman. The extra 2 weeks, tactics against heavy tanks, recognizing silhouettes at 1,500 plus meters, quickly determining attack angles, coordinated pack actions. Fort Hood, Texas, life-size mock-ups of tiger and panther. Drills on specific points: the turret hull gap, lower side plate, engine compartment. Standard, 3 of 5 hits at about 600 meters in 45 seconds or less. Corporal Robert Fisher, 705th, says, "For the first 3 months the tiger came in nightmares. After the range you understand. It is a metal box with big but real weak spots." A second factor: cohesion. M10s operate in at least threes. Crews know one another personally. Captain William Lindsay, Company B, 634th. In Sherman units, each tank is a lone fighter. We are a pack. If one makes a mistake, the others compensate. Statistics support this. A lone M10, cut off from its group, has about 34% chance of survival when meeting a tiger. In a 3-ship team, about 71%. The reason is not only tactical, but psychological. The sense of a shoulder beside you reduces panic decisions. Rosenman also describes an underdog advantage. M10 crews do not expect to win by specs, so they do not crack when facing a stronger opponent. By contrast, Tiger-Panther crews, used to superiority, falter when the machine does not guarantee victory. Illustration: March 19, 1945. Near Koblenz. 2 M10s, 771st Battalion, run into 4 Panthers in a narrow valley. Objectively, a loss. The 1st M10's commander, Lieutenant James Morgan, makes a paradoxical decision: attack. The M10 charges at about 45 kilometers per hour, firing on the move. First shot, a miss. Second, a hit on the Panther's front, no penetration but with psychological effect. Third, into the side of the neighboring vehicle as it turns, penetration. Panther crews, not expecting such audacity from a technically weaker foe, waver. 2 vehicles withdraw, a third slips into a ditch, a fourth halts to aim. The 2nd M10 uses the pause, swings to the flank. 2 rear kills. Morgan finishes a third. In his report, Morgan records, "They expected us to flee or dig in. The attack was illogical. Therefore, it worked." They were not ready psychologically. Rosenman's conclusion: M10 crews developed a unique psychological adaptation. They accepted technical weakness and turned it into tactical flexibility. Not a complex, but the confidence of professionals who offset deficiencies with skill. By war's end, about 63% of M10 commanders have 6 or more months of combat experience, the highest figure among American armored branches. The average crew age, about 24.3 years, younger than Sherman crews at about 26.1, and artillerymen at about 27.8. Yet survivability is higher thanks to training and tactics. March 1945. Among the captured documents of the staff of the 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, was a memorandum by Obersturmbannführer Otto Baum, dated February 12, 1945. Tactical assessment of the American tank destroyer M10. The opening paragraph: "The M10 is technically inferior compared to our Panthers and Tigers. A frontal attack by the American tank destroyer against our heavy machines always ends in the Wehrmacht's favor. Aggressive closing is recommended." Exactly this confidence in iron superiority became the strategic mistake. The M10 was evaluated purely by parameters: armor thickness, caliber, mass, while its employment doctrine was ignored. Example: Panzerwaffe instructions, January 1945, for Tiger II crews, on contact with M10, close frontally to 800 to 1,000 meters. The Koenigsteiger's front guarantees protection against 76mm rounds at any distance. What was ignored? The M10 avoids frontal duels. On spotting a Tiger II at over 1,000 meters, American TDs withdraw, lure into an ambush, and hit from the flank. Guaranteed safety applies only in a static standoff, which the Americans do not allow. The numbers confirm it. Of 89 Tiger II destroyed on the Western Front in January to March 1945, only 7, about 7.8%, suffered frontal penetrations. 34, about 38.2%, were side hits. 28, about 31.5%, were rear hits. 20, about 22.5%, were first immobilized by hits to the tracks and then finished off. The M10 does not try to take the front. It creates conditions where that is unnecessary. Hauptmann Johannes Müller, Heavy Battalion 503rd, in captivity, April 1945. We expected tank duels like in the East. Instead, we got a hunt, where our 69 tons became a disadvantage, not an advantage. The second mistake is underestimating enemy mobility. Planning used 6 to 8 hour operating radii. Tiger, about 120 kilometers on highway. Panther, about 170 kilometers. It seemed sufficient. The M10 covers about 300 kilometers on one refuel thanks to lower mass and the more economical GM 6046, two 6-cylinder engines, together about 375 horsepower. Consumption, about 160 liters per 100 kilometers versus about 270 liters per 100 kilometers for the Tiger II. This allows TD battalions to change sectors 2 to 3 times a day, strike, disengage, and reappear from another direction. German reconnaissance records the M10 in one sector in the morning, another 40 to 50 kilometers away by evening. Commanders assume the presence of additional battalions that in fact do not exist. It is a single battalion maneuvering rapidly. The third mistake, coordination. Fuel shortages often force German tanks to act in scattered packets. Tigers and Panthers concentrate only on critical axes. Other sectors are held by Panzerfaust or SPGs. For the M10, there are cohesive battalions of 36 vehicles under centralized control. The SCR 610 radio provides stable command out to about 16 kilometers. A typical situation. German attention fixes on the decoy, while 2 other vehicles move to the flank. SS Obersturmbannführer Kurt Meyer, Hitlerjugend, report of March 8th. American TDs are not tanks. They are wolf packs. They do not wait for our blow. They strike first, from unexpected directions and in coordination. The fourth mistake, strategic classification. The M10 is perceived as a defensive weapon. Reality is different. TD battalions undertake offensive tasks. Raids on communications, hunts for isolated groups, blocking counterattacks. The Sherman holds the front. The M10 operates in depth. The consequence is visible in losses. January to March 1945, Tigers and Panthers destroy about 418 Shermans versus about 187 M10s. Meanwhile, M10s destroy about 312 heavy German tanks, Shermans about 276. In efficiency terms, Sherman about 1 to 1.5, M10 about 1 to 1.67. In the Americans' favor. The fifth mistake, psychology. Tiger and Panther crews are raised to believe the machine guarantees victory if you follow the rules. The M10 shattered that faith. A doubt appears. Is a better machine enough? The effect is palpable. Captured in April 1945, Unteroffizier Hans Schmidt, Panther commander, says, "Earlier we feared the T-34 for its numbers. Now we fear the M10 for its unpredictability." The mistake was systemic. The enemy was judged by the iron, while doctrine was ignored. The M10 is the weaker tank, but the better tank hunter, a nuance that proved decisive. March 23, 1945. Operation Plunder. Allied crossing of the Rhine, the largest river crossing since Normandy. On the eastern bank, remnants of the Wehrmacht defense, including the 9th and 116th Panzer Divisions. Recon counts 47 serviceable vehicles, 12 Panthers and 4 Tiger the First among them. The first wave begins at 9 o'clock in the evening on March 22nd. Infantry and alligator amphibians and assault boats. The second, at 3:30 in the morning on March 23rd. Pontoon bridges for light vehicles. Heavy tanks must wait for engineer bridges, whose construction takes 18 to 24 hours. But the 814th Tank Destroyer Battalion receives an unorthodox task: cross with the second wave. The M10 weighs 29.6 tons. At the limit of M2, Class 30 pontoons rated for about 27.2 tons. Engineers assess the flooding risk at 35 to 40%. Captain Robert Mackenzie decides to reduce weight, half ammunition load, 27 instead of 54 rounds, and minimum fuel, 160 liters instead of 265. Savings, about 1.8 tons, enough to pass in the safe zone. 4:15. The first M10 rolls onto the pontoon. The structure sags about 12 millimeters. Water rises to within about 8 centimeters of the edge. Driver Sergeant George Ryan holds 3 kilometers per hour. Slower risks dangerous oscillation, faster creates a wave. Bridge length, 387 meters. Crossing time, 7 minutes 40 seconds. By 6:30-12, M10s of Company A are on the eastern bank. No losses, though 2 pontoons need repair. The battalion occupies the heights near Reese. Observation out to about 2.5 kilometers towards Lesel. 8:20. Counterattack. 8 Panthers of the 9th Panzer Division, with Panzer Grenadiers and Stock AFZ. 251. Try to throw the bridgehead back and destroy the pontoons. Mackenzie faces a tactical dilemma. Half load, 27 rounds per vehicle, about 324 in total, against 8 Panthers plus infantry. That is too little for a prolonged duel. The fight must be decided quickly. He arrays 9 M10s frontally to show strength. He hides 3 more behind the slope, the unseen group. The Germans close frontally to about 1,100 meters. The Americans fire first. The range is too great for reliable penetration even of Panther sides, but the psychological effect works. The column halts and deploys into line, trying to exploit the KWK-42's reach, effective about 1,500 meters. The hidden M10s wait, 900 meters, 700, 600. At about 520 meters, the flanking platoon hits the sides. First 3 shots, 2 hits, 1 Panther immobilized. Crews are disoriented. The threat is from the flank. The German commander orders withdrawal. Mackenzie has anticipated this. A 4th M10, pushed onto the southern flank, blocks the only retreat road. Its first round stops the lead Panther sideways across the lane, a traffic jam. Then 8 minutes of methodical fire from 3 directions against stationary or slow targets. Ranges 300 to 600 meters, the sweet spot for the 76mm gun. Result: 6 Panthers destroyed, 1 damaged and captured, 1 breaks through. Ammunition expenditure, 112 rounds, averaging about 18.6 per Panther destroyed. American losses: 1 M10, a 75mm, hit into the open turret compartment. 2 killed, 3 wounded. The key point: the strategic result. The counterattack is disrupted in 23 minutes. The pontoons remain intact. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the 1st Shermans and anti-tank artillery cross to the east bank. The bridgehead holds, March 24th. The positions of the 814th are visited by General Bernard Montgomery. After hearing the report, he sums up laconically, "Captain, your boys won the crossing before it even began. This fight is cited twice in training courses: limited ammunition, risky crossing, numerical superiority of the enemy. Yet, correct positioning, coordination, and terrain nullify the shortcomings. A small flourish in the battalion's unofficial history." After the battle, Sergeant Ryan, driver of the 1st M10 onto the pontoon, jokes to Mackenzie, "Sir, next time we go in with half ammo, warn the Germans to bring half their tanks too." A joke, but it captured the crew's confidence. By the end of March, the Allies had forced the Rhine along about 400 kilometers. M10 battalions took part in 23 of 31 major crossings. Their deployment speed and volume of fire made them indispensable for protecting fragile bridgeheads. April 7th, 1945. The Ruhr Pocket, encircled, remnants of Army Group B, about 325,000 German soldiers. Among them, fragments of the 3rd, 9th, and 11th Panzer Divisions. Recon estimates 60 to 80 serviceable tanks, mostly Panzer IV and Panther, fuel at the brink. The 899th Tank Destroyer Battalion is tasked with blocking breakouts in the northwestern sector. Operational, 28 M10s, some lost earlier, no replacements. Opposing them, an uncertain number of vehicles making desperate attempts to break free. The character of the fighting changes. German crews understand this is the end. Instead of measured tactics, risky dashes by small groups. Panthers punch through in columns of 3 to 5 vehicles, maximum speed, minimal maneuver, all in. April 11th, 2:30 in the afternoon. 4 Panthers try to smash positions near Dortmund. Initial detection, about 1,400 meters, speed about 35 kilometers per hour. Lieutenant Carl Anderson's M10 covers a road junction. The usual scheme fails. The enemy does not maneuver or hide. It simply pushes forward. Anderson orders fire from maximum range to break the rush. 1,150 meters, a miss. Second shot, a hit on the lead Panther's nose without penetration, but it damages the driver's periscope. The Germans do not stop. 3 vehicles bypass the damaged one and continue. 900, 700, 500 meters. Anderson understands. If they pass, rear units lie behind his position. He orders the driver to block the road with the hull. 29.6 tons versus about 44.8. An unequal duel, but the gunner manages 2 shots at the lower glacis at about 180 meters. Both hits, one penetrates, detonating ammo. The explosion halts the other 2 Panthers. Debris knocks out optics, drivers lose orientation. Anderson's second M10 swings to the flank and finishes both vehicles with side shots at about 240 meters. The fight lasts 4 minutes 20 seconds. Anderson will receive the Silver Star, though in his report he will write, "This was not courage, it was desperation. If they had passed, they would have slaughtered hundreds of our rear troops." A hallmark of the final weeks. The break in German crew's psychology. Earlier, caution and reliance on the iron. Now, desperation that simplifies the opponent's task. Tactics become more predictable. April 16th, Army Group. B capitulates, about 317,000 prisoners, including 30 generals. Trophies, 24 Panthers, 11 Tiger Lejeune, 3 Tiger II, no fuel, some without ammunition. Engineers record, track wear 70 to 85%, engines needing major overhaul, optics damaged on about 60% of vehicles. The M10 battalions push east. April 25th, meeting on the Elbe with Soviet forces. Major Charles Hunter, 771st, notes, "We saw T-34-85, their tank destroyers. The philosophy is similar, mobility over armor, fire over weight. They look at our M10 as a light machine. We look at their T-34 as a medium tank. The role is the same. The last recorded M10 versus German tank engagement, May 2nd, 1945, near Bolzano, northern Italy. 2 M10s, 805th Battalion, intercept a retreating Panther bound for Austria. Contact, about 680 meters. 3 shots, 2 hits. The Panther is destroyed. The crew surrenders. The tank commander, SS Oberscharführer Walter Kruger, tells the American lieutenant, 2 years ago, I did not fear your M10. Now, I understand, it was futile. Asked, why? He answers, you learn to turn weakness into strength. We never learned to counter that. Final statistics. April 1st to May 8th, 1945. M10 battalions destroyed or captured 127 German tanks, Panther, Tiger, Panzer-Ausgauer. Own losses, 41 M10s. Exchange ratio 3.1 to 1, the best of the entire campaign. The reason was not a magic upgrade of the M10, but the enemy's psychological exhaustion, desperate attacks, fuel shortages, and the sense of imminent end make even the Tiger more vulnerable than a rationally handled M10. May 8th, Germany capitulates. The 899th Battalion stands near Pleusen. Sergeant Joseph Novak, the same man who knocked out a Tiger on July 16, 1944 in Normandy, writes, 11 months, 7 destroyed German tanks, 3 damaged M10s under me, none lost for good. I survived. The Wolverine did its job, not heroically, but effectively. This is the summary of the M10's philosophy. Not the best tank, not the most powerful gun, not the thickest armor, but the right machine for the right task in the hands of crews who knew its limits and could turn constraints into advantages. June 1945. The U.S. Ordnance Department publishes the report Statistical Analysis of Tank Destroyer Operations in the ETO, 247 pages of dry tables and conclusions, but the key figures sit on pages 8 through 12. Scale of participation. In the European theater, 4,993 M10s operated. 1,654 were irrecoverably lost, 33.1%. For comparison, Sherman, 6,748 of 15,890, 42.5%. Stuart M5, 1,247 of 2,562, 48.7%. The M10 had the lowest proportion of irrecoverable losses among American armored vehicles. Where the hits came from. Causes of M10 losses broke down atypically. Anti-tank artillery, 37.8%, 625 vehicles. Enemy tanks, 28.4%, 470. Panzerfausts and other launchers, 18.2%, 301. Mines, 9.1%, 150. Aviation, 6.5%, 108. The most telling detail, less than one-third of M10s were destroyed by tank guns, though tanks were their nominal target. The explanation is simple. Avoidance doctrine. If conditions are unfavorable, the M10 does not brawl head-on. It withdraws, regroups, and attacks from a position of strength. Static AT guns, by contrast, caught M10s more often. How many and what they destroyed? By target type. Medium tanks, Panzer III, Panzer IV, Panzer 38T, 2,847. Panther, 892. Tiger Beseer, 347. Tiger II, 89. SPGs on tank chassis. Istug III, Jagdpanzer IV, Jagdpanther, 1,256. Total, 5,431 German armored vehicles destroyed. Efficiency ratio. M10 losses to enemy tanks destroyed, 1 to 3.28. Better than Sherman, 1 to 2.41. And better than any other American armored vehicle. A caveat. The M10 more often met heavy tanks. That is its very purpose. Matchups by type. Versus Panzer IV, 1 to 4.2 in the M10's favor. Versus Panther, 1 to 1.9. Versus Tiger, Baron, 1 to 2.1. Versus Tiger II, 1 to 2.2. The heavier the opponent, the harsher the math. Yet even against Tiger II, the M10 destroyed more than it lost. Engagement ranges. Average kill distance for M10, 587 meters. For Sherman, 734 meters. For British 17-pounder AT guns, 923 meters. In other words, the M10 worked closer, deliberately accepting risk to compensate for limited penetration. Loss ranges. Average distance at which German tanks killed M10s, 412 meters. Americans approached close, 587, yet died even closer, 412. A hard, high-risk tactic. Ammunition in numbers. Average M10 rounds per tank kill across the war, 6.8. Trend line. June 1944, Normandy, 11.2. December 1944, Ardennes, 9.7. April 1945, 4.3. The learning curve is obvious. Crew statistics. The average alive at war's end, M10 crew, 8.7 months of combat. Median 4.2 tanks destroyed, spread from 2 to 5 up to 15 plus. 2.1 vehicle changes, damage or loss. Survivability on hit. For M10, 34.7%. Entire crew alive, 41.2%. Partial survivors, partial wounded or killed, 24.1%. Entire crew killed. The open turret made the M10 more vulnerable to fragments, but eased evacuation. For the Sherman with a closed turret, 41.2% whole crew survival, but 31.8% total crew fatalities, more often than in the M10. The open turret trade-off, more wounded, fewer total losses. Crew opinions. Survey of 340 crews in May 1945. Replace the M10 with a Sherman with a 76mm gun? 67% no. Reasons: M10 mobility, 48%. Use to the machine, 31%. Better observation from the open turret, 21%. Is the M10 sufficiently protected? 89% no. Add armor at the cost of speed? 71% no. Crews consciously traded armor for maneuver. Economics of war. Unit costs: M10, $54,320 Sherman, M4, A3, $64,455 Panther, $117,000 $1945 Tiger Eye, $250,800 The M10 was cheaper than American peers and far cheaper than German heavyweights, while delivering a better effectiveness to cost ratio. Final metric: for each dollar spent on the M10, the U.S. destroyed $19.80 worth of German armor, measured by value of tanks destroyed. For Sherman, $11.40. For AT guns, $8.70. The M10 was the most cost-effective investment of the American armor program. August 1945. The war in Europe has ended, but the M10 keeps serving. United Kingdom. 1,648 Lend-Lease Achilles remain in service until 1951. With 17-pounders, they are judged more effective than quite a few post-war tanks. France, 227 M10s, 1945 to 1946. Action in the First Indochina War, 1946 to 1954. Cruise value mobility in jungle, about 48 kilometers per hour on road, about 26 off-road, enough for quick raids. November 1950. Fight near Sao Bang, 3 M10s ambushed by Viet Minh, mines plus captured Japanese bazookas. One is mined, crew evacuates. The other two, doing about 42 kilometers per hour under fire, break out. The 76mm gun cracks bunkers at 800 to 1,200 meters. Captain Jean-Luc Dupont sums up, "The M10 was not designed for guerrilla war, but its speed and fire are more useful here than heavy armor." Last French M10s retired in 1956, replaced by AMX-13. Israel, 12 to 24 M10s, 1948 to 1949. Combat in the 1948 war against Syrian and Egyptian armor, mostly Crusader, obsolete Renault R35. Cruise modify vehicles, extra desert fuel tanks, partial removal of ammo racks to carry 3 to 4 infantry in the fighting compartment. The 76mm performs reliably against light armor at over 1,000 meters. China, KMT. 36 M10s, 1947, via U.S. aid, used in the Civil War. Notable, mounting a 12.7mm AA machine gun on the turret, a modification Americans did not widely adopt. In 1949, the PLA captures 18. Some likely appear in the Korean War. Mentions of American tank destroyers near Cheongwon, September 1950. Yugoslavia, 8 to 15 M10s after the break with the USSR, 1948. Service to the mid-1960s as trainers. An experiment to fit Soviet 85mm guns fails, turret incompatibility. Denmark. Longevity record, 2 M10s on the Faroe Islands as static gun positions. Until 1982, guns removed, turrets welded, chassis original, M10, plus 37 years of post-war service. Impact on design thinking. Direct technical influence was limited. The light hunter with thin armor concept gives way to main battle tanks, firepower plus armor plus mobility in one platform. Yet the M10's philosophy, tactics matter more than paper specs, flows into NATO doctrine, kindred in idea. AMX-13, 1953, JP's 45, Jagdpanzer, 1965, STRV-103, 1967. None copies the M10 literally, but the lineage is clear. Mobility plus fire to compensate for armor, memory, and exhibits. The last running M10, Achilles, is displayed at the Bovington Tank Museum, United Kingdom. The engine runs. The vehicle appears at Tankfest. In 2019, this M10 reached about 35 kilometers per hour, 74 years after production. People over iron. U.S. M10 Veterans Associations endured into the 1990s. The last large gathering, June 1994, Fort Knox, 47 veterans. Average age 72. They spoke not of calibers, but of comrades, Norman streets, Ardennes cold. Joseph Novak, one of the last M10 commanders who fought from June 1944 to May 1945, died in 2003 at age 82. The New York Times obituary quotes his 1989 interview, "The M10 was not the best tank of the war, but it was our tank. And we made it good enough." That is the essence of the M10's legacy. Not a technological triumph, but a triumph of adaptation. A machine that on paper lost to tigers and panthers, yet prevailed where it mattered, on the battlefield, in the hands of crews who understood its strengths and limits. Today's echo. Analysts sometimes compare the M10 with TOW, Javelin, NLAW, a different era and technology, but the same philosophy. A light, mobile platform with a powerful punch defeats heavy armor through tactical flexibility. The story of the M10 Wolverine is the story of recognized weakness, properly compensated, becoming operational strength. The Germans built Tiger and Panther as technological masterpieces. The Americans built the M10 as a tool. In the end, the tool proved more effective than the masterpiece. When May 8, 1945 silenced the guns in Europe, the numbers began to speak. 4,993 M10 Wolverines fought the campaigns. To their account, 5,431 destroyed German tanks and SPGs at 1,654 irrecoverable losses, an exchange of 3.28 to 1, the best among American armor. Behind the dry statistics lies a wider story. The Americans built a machine that lost on paper: thinner armor, lighter gun, weaker engine than German benchmarks. And yet it won where it mattered, in real combat. The M10 was not conceived for frontal duels with Tigers or Panthers. The 76mm gun did not pierce the Royal Tiger's front. The about 37mm frontal protection did not stop an 88mm hit. The open turret increased fragment risk. But American command bet on tactics, not passport specs. Do not hit the front if you can find the flank. You do not need thick armor if the enemy cannot get a settled aim. An open turret is a minus under artillery, but a plus for observation and rapid evacuation. The pack hunting doctrine turned weakness into a tool. 3 M10s did what one could not. First lured, second flanked, third sealed the retreat. Simple scheme, devastating effect. From Normandy to the Elbe, it systematically stripped away German advantages. German crews expected a duel of specifications, 100mm versus 37. Instead, they met asymmetry, 48 kilometers per hour, and maneuver against 57 tons of inertia. Panzer doctrine rested on the assumption the better tank wins the battle. The M10 proved something else. The better crew, in the right position, wins the campaign. The numbers capture learning in motion. June 1944, 11.2 rounds per kill. April 1945, 4.3. Not from a magic upgrade, but because crews learned the enemy's anatomy, seams, angles, weak zones, and turned knowledge into a weapon sharper than caliber. The Ardennes showed the limits. Fog, snow, 100 to 200 meter visibility, neutralized observation, and maneuver. Tiger II with 150mm front made frontal attempts suicidal. The ratio fell to about 1.3 to 1, the worst stretch. Yet even there the M10 accomplished its aim. It did not annihilate Kampfgruppe Piper, but slowed it exactly long enough for reserves to arrive. Tactical minus. Strategic plus. The Rhine crossing revealed versatility. A machine designed as a tank destroyer proved light enough for risky pontoon crossings, mobile enough for lightning deployment, and toothy enough to break counterattacks. Not perfect in every role, but fit for many. After the war, the M10 lived on for decades. Indochina with France, Negev, deserts with Israel, training units in Yugoslavia, even static defense in Denmark until 1982. A 1942 machine stayed useful 40 more years, a persuasive test of adaptability. Technical influence on later design schools was limited. The world moved to main battle tanks, merging fire, armor, and mobility. But the M10's philosophy, tactics outrank perfect specs, endured. Modern Javelin, NLAODU, Cornet, are not its technological heirs, but its ideological ones. Light platform, plus powerful strike, plus maneuver against a heavy foe. M10 veterans seldom spoke of heroism. They spoke of comrades, of fear held in check, of decisions made in seconds. Sergeant Joseph Novak, with 7 Tigers to his credit, said, "Heroes are the ones who did not return. We just did our job." In that restraint lies the heart of the Wolverine. Not a heroic symbol, not a technological marvel, not a pop culture icon. A tool built for a specific task and used by people who understood both its limits and its strengths. The Germans made Tiger the embodiment of armored might, impenetrable, deadly, legendary. But legends do not win wars. Wars are won by machines, crews, and tactics that work in real, not ideal conditions. On the test range, the M10 lost to the Tiger. In the fields of Normandy, the forests of the Ardennes, on the banks of the Rhine, it won where brochures do not count, only results do. Not because it was the better tank, but because it became the better tool in the hands of those who knew how to use it. The M10 versus German heavies proves technical superiority does not guarantee victory. 29.6 tons applied correctly, defeat 57 tons applied poorly. Tactics, training, and adaptation outweigh thickness of plate. Today, the last running M10 still rolls out at Bovington. 80 years on, the engine runs, the gun fires, the tracks turn. The Wolverine outlived the war, its enemies, and its era. Not the best tank. Good enough. In that lies the final lesson. The Germans sought perfection. The Americans sought sufficiency. And it was sufficiency, multiplied by scale, tactics, and the will to turn weakness into strength that won the war. The M10 Wolverine never became a pop culture legend like the Sherman, nor gained the mythical aura of the Tiger. But it did the essential thing. It stopped what could not be stopped, and in that lies its true victory. December 1944, the Ardennes Forest. German officer Helmut Ritter bends over the body of an American soldier. In the pocket, letters home, photographs, a pack of Lucky Strike. The date on the last letter, 4 days ago. The soldier had been fighting without pause for 48 days. 48! Ritter is stunned. According to all military medical standards, a fighter loses combat effectiveness after 20 days at the front. At most, 25. That was true on the Western Front of the First World War, and it was confirmed by the battles in the East. After that, a man breaks down. The psyche collapses, hands tremble, the weapon slips from his palms. Yet the Americans are still shooting, accurately in an organized way, as if they had just come out of a training center. Ritter does not know the crucial fact. This soldier is not an exception. He is part of a system. When the Germans planned Operation Wacht am Rhein, their last great offensive in the West, they based it on one assumption. The Americans were exhausted. They had been fighting since June, half a year of battles, from the beaches of Normandy to the borders of the Reich. By all the laws of military science, their combat capacity should have been almost drained. But on December 16th, 1944, when 20 divisions of the Wehrmacht surged forward into the Ardennes, the Americans did not crumble. They withdrew, but they held on. They lost positions, but did not panic. And within just 10 days, they halted the strongest German strike of the final year of the war. Why? The answer lies not only in courage, not in tanks or planes. The key was a system the Americans called the rotation policy, a simple idea that changed the very notion of human endurance. The Germans never understood it until the end. Their soldiers fought until they either ended up in a hospital or a mass grave. The Americans built a different logic. A soldier is not a cartridge. He cannot be expended in a single battle. He must be preserved, pulled from the line, and returned to the fight restored. This script is the story of how the U.S. Army created a system that allowed its soldiers to last longer, fight more effectively, and suffer fewer psychological breakdowns than any other force of the Second World War. It is the story of how bureaucracy turned into a weapon, how tables and charts saved thousands of lives, how proper organization proved stronger than fanaticism. Let us begin with what the Germans saw with their own eyes. November 1944. The Western Front, from the Netherlands to Switzerland. German intelligence compiles reports. The picture is the same everywhere. The Americans attack daily, without pause, without visible fatigue. Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, commander of the 1st SS Panzer Division, notes, "The enemy shows unusual endurance. Units we observed a week ago are still holding positions. No signs of demoralization or exhaustion are visible." To the Germans, this is puzzling. Their divisions usually fight for a few weeks, then are pulled back into reserve. There, they are replenished and given rest. Then the cycle starts again. But by the end of 1944, there are no reserves left. Units fight until collapse. Soldiers fall not from bullets, but from exhaustion. Psychiatric cases are rising. The diagnosis Kriegsneurose, war neurosis, becomes official. The figures are shocking. According to military medicine, after 30 days of continuous combat, a unit loses up to 40% of its combat strength without a single enemy shot. Men simply stop functioning. Hands shake, eyes fail to focus, reactions slow. They become easy targets. The Americans, however, keep fighting, day after day, week after week, and the Germans cannot understand how. They do not know about the documents on General Omar Bradley's desk. They have no idea that the soldier in the front line is just the tip of a vast mechanism, a mechanism that had begun turning already in North Africa. January 1943, North Africa. The Americans face the Wehrmacht for the first time in a large battle and suffer catastrophe. The Kasserine Pass, February 19th to 25th. Rommel and the Italians smash the U.S. II Corps. Losses, 300 killed, 3,000 wounded, 3,000 captured. But worse than the numbers was what the psychiatrists saw. Major Albert Glass, chief psychiatrist of the 2nd Armored Division, writes, "Soldiers arrive at the medical station with symptoms unrelated to wounds, trembling, loss of speech, apathy. One sits for 6 hours staring at a single point. Unresponsive. The diagnosis? Combat stress. In the First World War, it had been called shell shock or trench neurosis. The essence was the same. The nervous system collapses. In just 3 days of fighting, Glass treated 300 men with such symptoms. More than the number of the wounded. In some units, up to 30% of personnel broke down without a single bullet. Commanders were alarmed. The new leader of the II Corps, General George Patton, reacted harshly. Visiting hospitals, yelling at soldiers, calling them cowards, even slapping one in the face. The scandal nearly cost him his position. But the question Patton asked was precise. If 1/3 of soldiers collapse in 3 days, what will happen after a month? After 3? Glass and his colleagues began analyzing. They studied medical histories, interviewed soldiers, searched for patterns, and found them. It turned out that the ones breaking down were not the newcomers. It was those who had been fighting the longest. Men who survived the first month often became patients in the second. By the third, most were unfit. The curve was simple. First 2 weeks, adaptation. 3rd to 5th weeks, peak performance. After the 6th week, steep decline. After the 8th week, most are unfit. The conclusion was clear. Soldiers must be withdrawn from the front before they break. But when and how? Glass wrote a report and sent it upward. They read it and set it aside. Until Sicily. July 1943. Operation Husky. The landing in Sicily. 160,000 Allied troops. The first major amphibious operation in Europe. The fighting lasts 38 days. And once again, hundreds of cases of combat stress. Captain Frederick Hansen, psychiatrist of the 1st Infantry Division, keeps records. In the first week, 120 cases; in the second, 340; in the third, 680. The progression is relentless. But now, commanders have Glass's report in hand. They are ready to try something new. Colonel George Taylor, commander of the 16th Infantry Regiment, decides companies must rotate. 9 companies of the regiment take turns, 3 days on the front, 3 days in reserve. The result is striking. In Taylor's regiment, psychiatric cases fall by half compared to others. Combat effectiveness rises. Soldiers endure because they know that in 3 days they will rest. Hansen documents everything, compiles charts, and writes a report. This time, General Dwight Eisenhower reads it himself. Eisenhower is a pragmatist. He sees the numbers and instantly grasps, this works. He issues an order. The rotation system must apply across all divisions, not a recommendation, an order, but a new problem arises. It is one thing to rotate companies in a regiment, quite another to rotate entire divisions in an army. That requires logistics, planning, coordination. A full system must be built, and that is exactly what they began to create. Yuma, September 1943, London. Headquarters of SHAEF, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. In a small office on the 3rd floor sits Colonel William Menninger. Once a civilian psychiatrist, now he is the chief consultant on the morale of American troops. On his desk lies a mountain of reports from Tunisia, Sicily, and Italy, where battles have already raged for 2 months, and all of them say the same thing. Without a system of rotations, the army will be exhausted long before Berlin. Menninger is no romantic. He does not believe in intuition, but in numbers, and he begins drawing charts. Chart 1. Combat effectiveness. It rises in the first 2 weeks, peaks in the 3rd, and then plunges. After 6 weeks, collapse. Chart 2. Psychiatric cases. First week, isolated. 3rd week, dozens. 6th week, already hundreds per division. Chart 3. Combat losses. Soldiers who hold the front for more than 6 weeks die 3 times more often than newcomers. The reason is simple. Fatigue kills reaction. From this comes the conclusion. The optimal time at the front is 4 weeks, 6 at most. After that, the unit must be pulled back for at least 2 weeks in reserve. But how to put this into practice? By the end of 1943, there are only 8 American infantry divisions in Europe. By June 1944, there will be 21. By the end of the war, 41. Each holds 14,000 men. How to rotate 500,000 soldiers without collapsing the front? Menninger works with a group of logistics officers, and they create a system, simple on paper, intricate like a Swiss mechanism. Its foundation, 3 echelons, first line, combat units, second line, Corps Reserve, third line, Army Reserve. The scheme is this. A unit fights 4 weeks, then it is pulled off the line and replaced by one from the Corps Reserve. The veterans receive 2 weeks of rest and replacements, then another 2 in the Army Reserve, and back to the front. A full cycle, 4 weeks of fighting, 2 weeks in Corps Reserve, 2 weeks in Army Reserve, 8 weeks, and then the cycle repeats, on paper, flawless, but war rarely obeys paper schemes. January 1944, Italy, Anzio. The Allies land, trying to outflank the German Gustav Line. The operation drags into a bloody standoff lasting 4 months. Here, the rotation system is launched in full scale for the first time. Major General John Lucas, commander of Corps, receives the order. Implement Menninger's plan. He has 6 divisions. According to the concept, 2 should hold the line, 2 remain in Corps Reserve, and 2 in Army Reserve. The problem is obvious, a 40-kilometer front, and the Germans pressing everywhere. To pull out a division means leaving a gap. Colonel Russell Greer, Chief of Staff of the 3rd Infantry Division, finds a solution. Rotate not divisions, but regiments. Each division has 3 regiments of 3,000 men. 1 fights, 2 rest. After 2 weeks, rotation. But even this is no simple task. Replacing 3,000 men on the line requires delicate coordination of artillery, communications, supply. Greer drafts a detailed plan. Day 1. The fresh regiment takes positions behind the active one. Day 2. Gradual replacement of companies. Day 3. The old regiment withdraws to reserve. 3 days, and the line is renewed. The system works, but demands watchmaker precision. Corps headquarters maintains tables, which regiment is on the line, how many days it has fought, when it must be relieved, and by whom. Captain David Schenk, staff officer of Zig Corps, recalled, "We worked like a railway station, timetable down to the minute. If one rotation failed, the whole machine broke down." And sometimes it did break. On February 16, 1944, the Germans launched a major counterattack. All reserves were thrown in, rotations were canceled. Regiments fought non-stop for 3 weeks. The result was predictable. By March 10th, psychiatric cases in the 6th Corps reached 400 a week. A catastrophe. But when the German offensive faltered and the front stabilized again, rotations resumed, and the numbers plunged. Menninger reviewed the data from Anzio and concluded, "The system works, but only if reserves exist. Without them, it is impossible." Thus, a new rule: for every 2 divisions at the front, at least 1 must be in reserve. Ratio 3-2. Eisenhower read the report and understood. For the invasion of France, more divisions would be needed than planned. Not 30, but at least 40. The request went to Washington, and it was approved. The machine was ready. Ahead lay the ultimate test in Normandy. June 6, 1944. D-Day. On the beaches of Normandy, 156,000 American, British, and Canadian soldiers land, the largest amphibious operation in history. The Americans seized 2 beachheads, Utah and Omaha. At Utah, the advance is relatively orderly. At Omaha, a slaughter, about 2,000 killed and wounded in the first hours. Among those storming Omaha is the 1st Infantry Division, veterans of North Africa and Sicily. They know war and the value of rotation. But in the first days, rotation is impossible. Everyone is in line. The Germans resist ferociously. Every village a stronghold, every hedgerow a fortress. Major Charles Herbert, surgeon of the 16th Regiment, 1st Division, records in his diary, June 12th, 6th day of non-stop fighting. Soldiers come to the aid station with no wounds, but they simply cannot go on. One sergeant just sits down and weeps, says he cannot bear the sound of explosions. Another private has hallucinations. He sees dead comrades. The command realizes units must be relieved at once. Major General Clarence Hubner, division commander, contacts V Corps headquarters, requests that at least 1 regiment be rotated. On June 16th, the 29th Infantry Division, newly landed, replaces the 16th Regiment. The regiment pulls back for 3 days. Not 2 weeks as Menninger recommended, but better than nothing. Rest camp is 5 kilometers behind the line. For the first time in 10 days, soldiers sleep normally, eat hot food, wash, change into clean uniforms. The regimental psychiatrist, Captain Frederick Hansen, the same who had served in Sicily, visits the companies. He talks, tests, filters those on the edge of collapse. Hansen keeps precise records. 47 soldiers with combat stress are evacuated to hospital. 23 remain in the regiment, but reassigned to non-combat roles. Cooks, drivers, radio operators. Work without direct combat, but it keeps men in service and eases the strain on their nerves. On June 19th, the regiment returns to the line. Hansen's estimate, 85% combat readiness. Before the war, that would have seemed poor. Now it is excellent in the conditions of the campaign. In Normandy, rotations work imperfectly. Battles are too intense, room for maneuver too narrow, whole divisions often holding for 6 weeks without relief. But even partial rotation is better than none. The statistics speak. United States, in Normandy, on average 30 psychiatric cases per 1,000 soldiers per month. Britain, without a strict rotation system, 45 per 1,000. Germany, exact figures unknown, but indirect signs suggest over 60 per 1,000. On paper, the difference looks modest. Multiply it by months of battle and dozens of divisions, and it becomes thousands of saved nervous systems, thousands of men still able to fight. By August 25, 1944, the end of the Normandy battle, the Americans have lost 124,000 killed, wounded, and captured. A grim figure, but psychiatric cases, about 10,000, or roughly 8% of all losses. By contrast, in the First World War, that figure reached 30%. The system works, but the hardest trials are still ahead. August 25th, 1944. Paris is liberated. The Germans retreat toward the Reich's borders. American and British armies pursue. The pace, 30 to 40 kilometers a day. Not a methodical breakthrough, but a chase. Here the rotation system meets a new challenge: speed of advance. Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges, commander of the U.S. First Army, studies the map. 8 divisions of his army move from Paris to the Belgian frontier. In 2 weeks, they cover over 300 kilometers. But the soldiers are exhausted. They have fought since June 6th, 3 months without a real pause. By all rules, they should have been relieved long ago. But reserves are far behind. New divisions not yet arrived. Hodges decides, the advance continues, rotations postponed. Captain David Rollins, commander of Company G, 26th Infantry Regiment, 1st Division, writes on September 2nd, "We have been marching 12 days. We sleep 3 to 4 hours a night. Eat on the move. Half the company falls asleep right in the column. Officers wake them. One private dozed off at a halt and did not wake when the column moved. They found him an hour later. He slept so deeply he did not hear 20 trucks pass by." And yet, oddly, psychiatric cases are few, far fewer than in Normandy. Menninger analyzes the data and finds the reason. During a pursuit, soldiers exhaust themselves physically, but not morally. They see results: liberated towns, cheering crowds, retreating enemy. There is a sense of victory. In Normandy, every meter was bought with blood. Here they can march 20 kilometers without firing a shot, and that changes the psychology. Menninger formulates a new principle. Psychological fatigue depends not only on time at the front, but also on battle intensity and the sense of success. Victorious advance, soldiers endure 2 months. Positional warfare, maximum 6 weeks. Retreat, 3 weeks, and nerves break. But in September 1944, the Germans dig in on the Siegfried Line. The pursuit ends. Euphoria fades, trench routine begins, and rotations again become critical. The Hurtgen Forest. 50 square kilometers of dense thickets on the German-Belgian border. The Americans attack here from September to December 1944. It will become one of the bloodiest battles in the West. The forest is a true nightmare. Tanks bog down among the trees. Artillery is ineffective. Shells burst in the treetops, and a rain of fragments falls on friendly troops. The Germans sit in bunkers and trenches. Every position must be taken by hand. The 1st Infantry Division enters the Hurtgen on October 16th. The plan: break the defense within a week. Reality: the battle drags on for a month. Lieutenant Paul Bade writes home on October 25th, "We have been fighting 9 days. We do not see the sky, only branches. We do not see the enemy, only muzzle flashes. Every day we lose men, and the front does not move. We are attacking the same bunker for the 4th day in a row. Losses are horrific. In 2 weeks, the 1st Division loses 3,000 killed and wounded, a fifth of its strength. Worse still, psychiatric casualties, 800 cases of combat stress." Sergeant John Kastner recalls, "Private Miller was calm and reliable. On the 13th day, he dropped his rifle and ran back. We stopped him. He could not speak, only shook. They sent him to the aid station. We never saw him again." The commander, General Hubner, understands. The regiment must be pulled out. On October 28th, the 47th Division relieves the 16th Regiment. The soldiers leave the forest exhausted, faces gray and eyes empty. They have fought 12 days without rest. The regiment gets 10 days of respite and 900 replacements. On November 7th, it returns to the forest. Not ideal. Menninger's plan called for at least 2 weeks. But even a short pullback preserves effectiveness. Over 3 months of fighting, the Americans will lose 33,000 men in the Hurtgen. 6 divisions pass through the meat grinder, yet even here, units that rotated out for at least a week retained combat effectiveness 30 to 40%, better than those left without relief. Colonel Trevor Dupuy, the military analyst, will later write, "Hurtgen showed the limits of the rotation system. It cannot compensate for failed operational planning. But even in the worst conditions, rotation saves lives. In December, the battle ends. The forest is taken. The price, catastrophic. But without rotations, it would have been higher still. 4:30 a.m. December 16, 1944. The Ardennes forest shakes under the fire of 1,600 German guns, the heaviest preparatory barrage of the campaign. An hour later, the assault begins. 25 divisions of the Wehrmacht and Waffen, SS, 250,000 soldiers, and 1,400 tanks. Opposing them, only 4 American divisions of 8th Corps, 80,000 men over a 140-kilometer front. The ratio, 3-1 in Germany's favor. 2 divisions, the 99th and the 106th, are newcomers, arrived only 2 weeks earlier. The other 2, the 4th and the 28th, are veterans, but worn down by summer fighting. That is why they were sent here, to a quiet sector, for rest. Rotation in action. A perfect plan. Until the offensive begins. The first hours. Chaos. The 106th is encircled. 2 regiments, 7,000 men, surrender. The largest American capitulation in Europe. The 28th is split. German tanks push 20 kilometers, but the 99th resists. It yields ground, but in an organized way, and buys time. Captain Charles MacDonald recalls, "We were green. Most had not seen combat, but we were fresh. For the last 2 weeks we had slept 8 hours, eaten properly, and were in good shape. When the Germans attacked, we fell back, but without panic. We did what we had been trained to do. The contrast is stark. The Germans are veterans, but drained by years without rest. Their rotation is a hospital bed or a grave. The Americans are fresh, and that becomes the edge. General Omar Bradley throws in the reserves, the 7th and 10th Armored Divisions, the 82nd and 101st Airborne. All had rested in the previous months. Now they enter the fight restored. The 82nd arrives on December 18th. It fought in Normandy and Holland, then rested 2 months in France. The soldiers are well slept, gear is new, ammunition full. They stop the 1st SS Panzer Division near Stavelot. The 101st enters Bastogne on December 19th. The town is encircled, but the division holds it for 7 days. The Germans cannot take Bastogne. Why? Because the Americans are fresh. Later, in his memoirs, German Colonel Hans von Luck writes, "We did not understand how they did it. They fought in Normandy, now again at the front. And they look fresh. Our men are exhausted. The Americans are not. It seemed unfair. Unfair, but effective." By the end of December, the German offensive stalls. The Americans counterattack. The Battle of the Bulge ends in Allied victory in January. The cost, 89,000 casualties, 19,000 killed. But without the rotation system, it would have been far worse. January 1945. The Ardennes offensive has been repelled. The Allies regain their former lines. Next, the Rhine in the heart of Germany. Eisenhower now commands 73 divisions, about 4 million personnel, the largest force the United States has ever deployed in Europe. And this entire armada must be kept combat ready. SHAF headquarters in Versailles becomes a vast logistics center. Hundreds of officers synchronize unit movements, tables, charts, rotation schedules, all updated on a timetable. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Ingalls, personnel officer of the 1st Army, describes the mechanics. Each division has a card. On it, date of arrival at the front, days in combat, losses, state of morale. Every week we update the data. If a critical point is reached, 6 weeks of continuous combat, or over 25% losses, we recommend relief. It is a recommendation, not an order. The final decision lies with the Army commander. But in most cases, it is executed. The system must not stutter. February 1945. Operation Veritable. The push into the Rhineland. 12 American and British divisions in action. The fighting is hard. Every town a strong point, defense stubborn. The 9th U.S. Infantry Division enters combat on February 8th. On March 1st, it is relieved by the 79th. The 9th moves to reserve, 2 weeks of rest and replacements. On March 17th, it returns to the line. The rotation cycle ticks like a watch. The front does not sag because a fresh division always arrives on time to take the positions. The key element without which rotation chokes: replacements. Over 3 weeks of intense fighting, a division loses 2,000 to 3,000 men, killed, wounded, or missing. Another 300 to 500 are psychiatric cases. After pulling back to reserve, It is refilled with recruits from U.S. training centers. They receive a short adaptation course, 1 week with veterans, unit cohesion, digging in, firing under simulated fire, basic behavior under bombardment. Captain William Folks, company commander in the 26th Regiment of the 1st Division, explains, 19-year-old kids arrive. They are scared and have no idea what awaits them. We give them a week, show how to dig in, how to act under fire, how not to panic. In a week, they are no longer green. They are ready. Not perfectly ready, but far better than throwing them straight into battle. The statistics are simple. Those who complete the 1-week adaptation survive twice as often as newcomers off the trucks. The system works at every level, from foxhole to army staff. And the Germans see it, yet cannot understand why American units, just out of battle, return so quickly looking fresh. February 1945. Germany is squeezed between two fronts, the Red Army from the east, Americans and Brits from the west. SS Obergruppenführer Paul Hauser, commander of Army Group G, reads the reports and sees systemic fracture. Divisions melt not only from battle, but from exhaustion no longer compensable. The 316th Infantry Division, at the front since October 1944, 4 months without a break, 60% losses. Psychiatric statistics are vague, but regimental doctors estimate 1 in 3 is on the verge of collapse. The 352nd Volksgrenadier, fighting since June 1944. In 9 months, only 1 short relief in October, 3 weeks. Now back in the line, combat capability, 40%. Hauser understands. The army is coming apart, and there are no reserves. Every unit is already at the front. There is no one to replace them. He asks permission to pull at least 2 divisions for rest and refit. The answer from above, from Hitler himself: there will be no withdrawal, hold positions to the last. The Wehrmacht system, built on fanaticism and discipline, snaps. Desertions rise, subunits surrender in groups. Standartenführer Joachim Peiper, the same man who in autumn 1944 noted the strange resilience of the Americans, now commands remnants of a brigade. Of 4,000 men, 800 remain. Entry for March 5th. The soldiers no longer believe in victory. They fight only from fear of court-martial, but fear is a poor motivator. It will not replace rest. The contrast with the Americans is striking. Their divisions look fresh because they truly are fresh. They rested, received replacements, completed rotation. German physician Oberstabsarzt Erwin Schmidt of the Field Hospital of the 6th SS Panzer Army keeps his own tally. February 1945. 1,200 patients, 400 wounded, 800 sick or suffering nervous disorders. In his report, he writes, "The great majority of the sick are merely exhausted. They have not eaten properly for 2 months, have slept 4 hours a night. The body gives out. I can return them to duty in a week, but in 3 days they break again. This is not treatment. It is a mill that grinds people." The most terrible detail: the young soldiers, 16 to 17 years old. The Volkssturm, old men and teenagers, untrained, they break within an hour. Against this backdrop, the American system appears not as a miracle, but as the logical result of planning and experience. And it is precisely this system that pushes the war toward its end. March 7th, 1945. Remagen. The U.S. 9th Armored Division seizes the Ludendorff Bridge over the Rhine intact, the first foothold on the eastern bank. The division holds the bridge for 10 days under furious counterattacks. Losses are heavy, but the unit is fresh, just out of reserve, and it endures. On March 17th, it is relieved by the 78th Infantry Division. The 9th pulls back to rebuild. Meanwhile, other armies force the Rhine en masse. On March 22nd and 23rd, within 2 days, 20 divisions cross the river. The logistics impress. Every division knows its time window and sector. Rotations do not stop even at the peak of fighting. First Army under General Hodges employs rolling relief. 3 divisions attack, and after 3 days they are replaced by another 3. The first group moves to a 2-day reserve, then returns to battle, but along a different axis. The tempo is brutal. Armored columns cover 30 to 40 kilometers a day. The infantry keeps up because troops are cycled before nerves burn out. April 1945, Germany is split. From the west, the Americans and British close the jaws. From the east, the Red Army arrives. The Wehrmacht comes apart. And even now, the Americans do not break their principles. The 2nd Armored Division, which has reached the Elbe, is relieved by the 69th Infantry and goes to reserve. The war is almost over, yet the system runs to the end. Captain John Colby, a staff officer of the 2nd Armored, admits, "We thought we would just push on to Berlin. Instead, they pulled us out. 3 days of rest. I did not understand why then. The war was almost finished." The command understood. No one knew how long the fighting would last. Soldiers had to be preserved until the final day. May 8th, Germany capitulates. The war in Europe ends. U.S. losses in the European theater total 586,628 killed, wounded, missing, and captured. Of these, 135,576 killed. Psychiatric cases for the entire war, 929,307. Of these, 654,872 returned to duty, 70%. Compare, in the First World War, psychiatric casualties ran 30 to 40% of total losses. In the second, approximately 15%. The difference is enormous. The reason, the rotation system. A soldier pulled off the line in time can return. A soldier broken completely is lost forever. The Wehrmacht never learned this. There the soldier was expendable, use and discard. The Americans saw the soldier as the most valuable resource. He must be conserved, rotated, and sent back fresh. It sounds simple, but behind that simplicity lay thousands of hours of planning, analysis, and coordination. And this system saved tens of thousands of lives and hastened the end of the war. May 1945. The war is over, and for the analysts, the most important work begins. The U.S. Army creates a series of commissions to systematize experience. Among them, the Commission for the Study of Combat Stress and the Effectiveness of Rotations. It is led by Colonel William Menninger, the same psychiatrist who in 1943 helped articulate the rotation principles. The new task: gather all data, analyze it, and codify conclusions. Over 6 months, the team interviews thousands of soldiers and officers, examines 200,000 medical records of veterans, and pulls combat reports from all theaters. November 1945. Menninger presents an 847-page report, Psychiatry in Action. The experience of the U.S. Army in the Second World War. Key findings: time at the front critically affects combat effectiveness. The optimum is 4 weeks. After 6 weeks, effectiveness drops by approximately 40%. After 8, by approximately 70%. Rotations reduce psychiatric losses by 50 to 60% compared with holding units in continuous combat. A fighter pulled after 4 weeks and given 2 weeks of rest returns with 85 to 90% readiness. After 8 weeks without relief, even a month of rest yields only approximately 50% recovery. Rotating by units beats rotating individuals. Cohesion, shared experience, and morale are preserved. Optimal model: 3 stages, frontline, Corps Reserve, Army Reserve, targeting a ratio of 2 divisions on the line to 1 in reserve. Menninger's report becomes a desk manual for planners, not only in the United States. The British and French study it, and Soviet officers gain access through post-war exchanges. 1950. The Korean War. The United States applies the principles from day one, but with a modification: individual rotations. Each soldier spends exactly 1 year at the front, then demobilizes. The mechanics differ, but the core limit on time under fire remains. 1965 to 1973. Vietnam. Rotations again run 1 year per person. Here, the model stumbles. Colonel David Hackworth explains. In the Second World War, units rotated. Whole companies rested together, staying with people they trusted. In Vietnam, everyone moved on an individual clock. A newcomer arrived today, a veteran left tomorrow. The unit constantly churned, losing cohesion and trust. Lesson: rotations work only when unit integrity is preserved. 1991, the Persian Gulf War. A return to unit rotations. The result is high combat effectiveness with minimal psychological losses. 2001 to 2021, Afghanistan and Iraq. The system grows more complex. Brigade deployments for approximately 9 months, then approximately 12 months at home, and back into the cycle. Yet the foundation remains what Menninger articulated in 1943. Limit time under fire, provide rest, return the soldier fresh. Lieutenant General Harold Moore, a Vietnam veteran, summed it up in 2006. Everything we know today about rotations grew from the lessons of the Second World War. Menninger and his team saved not only the soldiers of 1944, they saved later generations. The system still works. That is today's reality. Modern NATO armies have used these principles for more than 80 years. Technology and details have changed. The core has not. A soldier is not a cartridge. He is not expended. He is protected, rotated, returned. What is obvious now was once a revolution. In 1943, it had to be proven with numbers, measured, and built into a system. And it was by field psychiatrists, logisticians, and staff officers. December 1944. The Ardennes. German officer Helmut Ritter bends over the body of an American soldier, the very frame with which we began. Now we know the answer to his silent question. How did the Americans hold out so long? The reason lies not only in heroism, not only in technology, not in how many tanks. The answer is in the system, boring to look at, bureaucratic, but brilliant. The rotation system. It began with a simple observation. After 6 weeks of uninterrupted frontline duty, the mind breaks. It grew from field psychiatrists' reports into a complex mechanism for coordinating hundreds of thousands of people, and it produced a tangible effect on the battlefield. The Germans saw only the outcome. U.S. soldiers who appeared fresh after months of war. They did not see the staff tables, rotation grids, officers piecing together the daily jigsaw of division movements. War is not only tanks and guns, it is also logistics, planning, and care for people. The Wehrmacht acted the old way. A fighter serves until death, injury, or collapse. Simple and brutal, and therefore inefficient. The Americans thought in the economics of war. A soldier is an investment, training, equipment, an ocean crossing. Why write it off after a month of combat when you can preserve, rotate, and return him? Raising overall effectiveness? It is a cold calculation that saves lives. The statistics are unforgiving. In the European theater, the United States lost 135,576 killed, total losses 586,628. Whereas German losses in the West reached over 400,000 killed. Part of that difference is technology and air power, but a significant share is the human factor. Fresh units shoot better, react faster, and make better decisions, because they have rested. After the war, rotations became standard. Formats differ. The essence is the same. No one sends divisions for half a year without relief. That is wasteful and a road to disaster. In the 1940s, this required proof. Today, it is an axiom. That axiom was forged by specific people. Psychiatrists counting cases in the foxholes of North Africa. Logisticians building charts in London. Generals who trusted numbers more than the inertia of tradition. They created a system that saved tens of thousands of lives in the Second World War, and hundreds of thousands in later wars. We are used to war history being the story of weapons, tanks, aircraft, rockets. Sometimes, though, it is the story of tables and charts. When bureaucracy becomes a weapon, an organization becomes an advantage. The rotation system is not a heroic last stand tale. It is about planning, care, and a simple truth. A soldier is a human being, not a tool. The Germans never fully grasped it. Fanaticism burns out. Devotion has limits. Discipline cannot replace sleep. The Americans did, and that became their edge. When we remember the Second World War, we speak of Normandy, the Ardennes, the Rhine, of great battles and the names of heroes. But victory was also secured by staffs, logisticians, psychiatrists, officers who drew rotation grids and hustled trains of replacements. They rarely received medals. Their names are not always in textbooks, yet their work saved the army. The lesson is simple. War is not only courage, but also intellect, planning, and knowledge of the human being. Sometimes the best weapon is not a tank, but a well-made table. The Germans did not see the tables. They saw soldiers who did not break, and they did not know why. Now we do. The system, simple in formula, effective in execution, brilliant in clarity, a system that defeated fanaticism with cold calculation and saved thousands of lives. It is not the loudest story of the war, but perhaps the most important.